The painter had been in my bedroom for less than 3 hours when he called me. I wasn't supposed to call. I was supposed to move the massive wardrobe. My husband refused to let anyone touch patch some damp drywall and repaint the room before Mason came home from Indianapolis. Instead, Dean Walsh was whispering, "Hannah, there's a steel door behind this thing." I thought I had misunderstood him. Then I heard something through his phone. A woman's voice. Weak. Terrified. "Please don't leave." Dean stopped breathing. So did I. Then the woman said something that turned my blood cold. "Please, don't let Mason know you found me." That was the moment my husband stopped being my husband. I became a stranger who had been sleeping beside me for 5 years. And suddenly, every cup of tea he had made me, every locked door, every worried phone call he had made to my mother, and every time he had told me, "You're just tired," Hannah meant something completely different. My name is Hannah Brooks. I was 32 when this happened. And until that Thursday morning, I thought the worst thing happening in my marriage was that my husband had become a little controlling. I had no idea he had been preparing everyone I loved for a life without me. 3 weeks before Dean found the door, Ruth Garner sat me down at my grandmother's kitchen table and told me someone else was eating inside my house. That was where it really began. Not with screaming, not with blood, not with some dramatic confession, with peanut butter. Ruth was 64 and had worked with my family for more than 20 years. She had helped my grandmother at Brooks Garden and Home, back when the business was still half greenhouse, half roadside stand. After Grandma June died, Ruth stayed 2 mornings a week at my farmhouse, several days at the garden center during busy seasons. She had a talent for noticing tiny things everyone else ignored. Missing pruning shears, a freezer door left cracked, a customer who had walked out without paying for a ceramic pot. Apparently, she also noticed peanut butter. That morning, I walked into the kitchen and found her sitting instead of cleaning. Ruth never sat during work hours. "Okay," I said, "what happened?" She looked toward the hallway. "Mason had left for Toledo before sunrise. I need you to listen before you explain this away." That irritated me immediately. "What am I explaining away?" "Sit." I sat. Ruth slid a notebook page across the table. On it were ordinary grocery items: crackers, bread, bananas, bottled water, soup, peanut butter. Next to them were dates. "What is this?" Things disappearing faster than they should. I almost laughed. "Mason snacks." I told me he doesn't. "Then maybe I do." Ruth stared at me. "You hate peanut butter." I stopped. She was right. Always had. Grandma used to joke that peanut butter was the only food she could safely hide from me. Ruth continued. "I bought a new jar on Monday. Wednesday morning, almost half of it was gone. Mason could have forgotten." That is what I thought. Her tone told me there was more. She reached into her apron and pulled out a small plastic bag. Inside were crumbs, a torn corner from a saltine wrapper. I stared at it. "Where did you get that?" "Upstairs." My stomach tightened. "Where?" "Outside your bedroom." I said nothing. Then I found more beside Mason's wardrobe. There it was. The wardrobe. A dark walnut monster that occupied nearly an entire wall of our bedroom. Mason claimed it had belonged to his grandfather. I hated it. I loved it. Or at least he insisted he did. Early in our marriage, he asked me not to move anything around it because he kept work equipment and private company material inside. That had seemed reasonable. Mason was a district operations manager for a regional home improvement chain. His job involved store openings, employee problems, vendor disputes, inventory shortages, and constant short trips around the Midwest. How was practical, organized, private. Everyone said so, especially my mother. "Thank God you married someone responsible," she had told me more than once. Ruth pulled something else from her bag, a pharmacy sack. Inside were 2 empty syringes without needles, gauze, alcohol wipes, and a small glass vial. Its label had been removed. Not torn, removed. Carefully. I stared at it. "Where did you find this?" "The trash Mason takes out himself." I looked up. Mason had one grocery bag he handled personally. I kept it in the mudroom cabinet and carried it to the outside bin himself. Hy told me it contained old work receipts, customer information, and damaged electronics from stores. I had teased him about being paranoid. Ruth had teased him too. The bag split Sunday, she said. This fell out. I picked up the vial. My hand began to shake. Ruth watched me. I almost put it all back. Why didn't you? She hesitated, then looked at me with wet eyes. Because I've watched your husband make your tea every night for nearly 2 years. The vial suddenly felt heavy. My nightly tea had started after Grandma June died. I stopped sleeping properly after her funeral. Mason noticed. He noticed everything. One night he brought me chamomile with magnesium powder and an over-the-counter sleep supplement. I slept harder than I had slept in months. The next night he did it again. Soon it became a ritual. Around 10:30, every evening, Mason would turn off the downstairs lights, rinse the last dishes, and carry a mug upstairs. Tea time. Sometimes he kissed my forehead. Sometimes he rubbed my shoulders. Sometimes he told me I worked too hard and needed someone to take care of me. I used to love that sentence. Someone to take care of me. Looking back, I had confused being cared for with being managed. For almost 2 years, I slept unnaturally hard. There were mornings I woke with a dry mouth and a headache behind my eyes. Sometimes I could not remember Mason coming to bed. Once around 3 in the morning, I woke enough to realize he was sitting beside me, watching. Maz, my voice barely worked. I touched my cheek. Go back to sleep. What are you doing? Checking on you. Why? You were breathing strangely. I remember trying to smile. You're weird. I smiled too. Probably. Then he pulled the blanket higher over my shoulder. Sleep, Han. I did. Immediately. The next morning, the memory felt blurry enough that I dismissed it. That was one of Mason's greatest talents. He never had to force me to ignore strange things. He simply gave them reasonable explanations. A locked bedroom door, work equipment, a missing receipt. I misplaced it. A strange sound behind the wardrobe, old plumbing. My headaches, stress, my deep sleep, finally getting the rest I needed. My sister avoiding me, busy with her new job. My mother suddenly asking whether I had been drinking. She worried too much. Every individual explanation sounded harmless. Together they had built a cage I could not see. That afternoon I asked Ruth not to tell anyone. Not my mother. Not my sister Brooke. Especially not Mason. What are you going to do? Ruth asked. I don't know. That was true. But that night I did something different. Mason brought me my tea. I took 2 sips while he stood beside the bed answering an email. Then he went into the bathroom. I poured the rest into the soil of a fern by the window. 20 minutes later, I was still awake. 30 minutes. 40. For the first time in almost 2 years, my thoughts remained sharp after 11. I lay still. Around 12:15, Mason moved. Slowly, carefully. I got out of bed without turning on a light. I kept my breathing deep. He stood over me. I felt his fingers touch my wrist, checking my pulse, then my cheek. Then one fingertip brushed my eyelid. Hannah. I did not move. He waited. My heart was pounding so hard I thought he had to feel it. Finally, he whispered, "Good." Then he crossed the room. I heard the wardrobe open. A click. Another click. Then a soft electronic beep. Something heavy released behind the wall. I almost opened my eyes. I did not. Mason disappeared somewhere behind the wardrobe. I was gone 26 minutes. I counted every one. When he returned, he stood beside the bed again, then got under the covers and fell asleep. I did not sleep at all. The following morning, he studied me across the kitchen island. You look tired. I slept badly. His spoon stopped moving inside his coffee. Really? Yeah. You drank the tea. I smiled. Every drop. Something passed across his face. Gone immediately. Maybe you're coming down with something. Maybe. He crossed the kitchen and kissed my forehead. I nearly flinched. I did not. That afternoon, my sister Brooke called. I almost told her. Almost. Hey, I said. You sound weird. My chest tightened. Do I? Just tired. There was a pause. Then she added too casually. Are you sleeping okay? I went still. Why? No reason. Brooke. Another pause. Mason mentioned you've been having some rough nights. My stomach dropped. When? Last week. What exactly did he say? She sighed. Hannah, don't make this into a thing. I'm asking what my husband told you about me. He said you were exhausted and forgetting little things. I stared out the kitchen window. I'm forgetting things. That's what he said. Do you think I am? Brooke hesitated. That hesitation hurt. Hannah, do you? I don't know. I don't see you every day. I swallowed. He said you thought I was mad at you about Grandma. My heart sank farther. What? Brooke became uncomfortable. I told me you felt guilty. About inheriting the house. Yes. Do you resent me? No. Did you ever tell him you did? No. Did you ever tell me? No. I closed my eyes. Then why were the two of you discussing it? Brooke became defensive. I was worried about you. There it was. The phrase that would soon become poison. I was worried about you. Brooke, something is wrong with Mason. Silence. I could hear her breathing. Then she said, Hannah, please don't do this. My throat tightened. Do what? He does everything for you. I said nothing. He handles the house when you're overwhelmed. He helps at the garden center. He drives Mom to appointments when you're busy. He remembers everyone's birthdays. Brooke, Hein loves you. The sentence hurt more than I expected. I looked at the pharmacy bag Ruth had hidden in my desk drawer. Something is wrong. Brooke sighed. You've been under a lot of stress since Grandma. She died almost 3 years ago. I know. So stop using her death to explain things I'm saying right now. Brooke went quiet. Then she said softly, I think you need sleep. I ended the call. That was the first time Mason's work became visible to me. I had not simply been controlling me. He had been building credibility around himself. Mason was the son-in-law who drove my mother to a colonoscopy when Brooke and I were both working. The husband who remembered to bring flowers to family dinners. The guy who repaired my sister's garbage disposal without charging her landlord. The man who volunteered to grill at every July 4th cookout. He answered family group messages faster than I did. He remembered medication schedules, birthdays, doctor appointments, the names of Brooke's co-workers, the brand of coffee Mom liked. I had thought those things made him loving. Now I wondered how many of them made him necessary. 2 days later, Mason left for Indianapolis. He stood beside his truck in the driveway while I hugged him goodbye. You sure you're okay? Yes. You've seemed distracted. Christmas season. That was believable. Brooks Garden and Home sold hundreds of wreaths, trees, poinsettias, and gift baskets every December. He nodded. Don't wear yourself out. I won't. Take your tea. I looked straight into his eyes. Always. For less than a second, his expression changed. Then he smiled. Love you. Love you too. I watched his truck disappear. Then I called Dean Walsh. Dean had painted several rooms for my grandmother and later our sunroom. 58. Divorced. Permanent paint under his fingernails. He had a habit of staring at walls as if they had personally offended him. I want the bedroom repainted, I told him. The green wall. Yes. Thank God. Despite everything, I laughed. I also think there may be moisture behind Mason's wardrobe. That was a lie. I need you to move it and look. When? Thursday. I can do Thursday. I did not tell him about the crumbs. The vial. The nighttime beep. I told myself I simply needed someone else to see what was behind that wardrobe. Maybe wires. A safe. Boxes. Something embarrassing. Something criminal. I did not let myself imagine a person. Thursday morning, Dean arrived at 8. Ruth came too. At 9:40, I could no longer stand listening to furniture scrape upstairs, so I drove to the garden center. At 10:16, Dean called. Hannah. His voice sounded wrong. Yeah, I need you to come home. What happened? Just come home. Dean, what happened? Silence. Then, I moved the wardrobe. My knees weakened. And there's a steel door. I gripped the checkout counter. What kind of door? Like a safe room door. Keypad. Heavy frame. My heart started racing. Then he lowered his voice. Hannah, I knocked. I stopped breathing. Why? I thought maybe it was storage. And someone knocked back. The room around me seemed to disappear. Then Dean whispered. I heard a woman. What did she say? There was a pause. His voice shook. She said not to tell Mason we found her. I grabbed my keys. When I reached the farmhouse, Dean and Ruth were standing outside. Dean had already called 911. I headed toward the door. He grabbed my arm. No, it's my house. That's why you don't go upstairs alone. That sentence stayed with me. It was my house. And suddenly I was the least informed person inside it. Police arrived within minutes. Detective Tessa Grant came shortly afterward. The wardrobe had been dragged several feet from the wall. Behind it was a narrow steel door with a keypad. I had slept less than 10 feet from it. For years. One officer pressed his ear against the door. Everyone became silent. Nothing. Then, tap, 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 pause, tap. Tap. Ruth started crying. The fire department eventually forced the door open. The first words we heard from inside were, "Is he here?" Tessa answered gently. "No. Where is he?" "Who?" "Mason." My knees nearly gave out. Tessa went in first. Paramedics followed. Several minutes later, they brought out a woman. Thin, pale, dark hair cut unevenly around her shoulders. A faded Michigan State sweatshirt hung from her body. One ankle carried a wide, dark ring of scar tissue. She looked down the hallway. At our wedding photograph. At Grandma June. At my mother. Then at me. Her eyes locked onto mine. "You're Hannah." I could barely speak. Yes. Her face changed. Not hatred. Not exactly relief. Something more complicated. "I didn't know," I said. "I swear to you I didn't know." She stared at me. Then said, "I know." My eyes filled. She swallowed. "I might assure you were asleep." That sentence destroyed every remaining excuse inside me. The paramedics took her downstairs. Her name was Erin Cole, 30 years old, missing for more than 2 years. Her family had believed she was dead. Inside the hidden room were a cot, canned food, bottled water, a desk, a computer, an electric hot plate, storage bins, and a chain fixed to the floor. But what broke me were the photographs. My mother, Brooke, the garden center, me, sleeping. In one photograph, Mason was holding my phone against my thumb. In another, my eyes were partly open but empty. On the wall was a family calendar. Thanksgiving, Christmas Eve, Brooke's birthday, Mom's doctor appointment, our annual wreath-making weekend. My life had been pinned to the wall of another woman's prison. That afternoon, my mother called. I had not contacted her yet. "Hannah." "Yeah." "Are you okay?" Something about the question bothered me. "Why?" "Mason called me." My body went cold. "When?" "This morning. Before Dean found the door." "What did he say?" Mom hesitated. "Mom, I said you weren't sleeping again." I closed my eyes. "What else?" "That you've been acting suspicious." "Suspicious of what?" I didn't say. "What exactly did he say?" My mother sighed. "He said you had moved things around in the bedroom while he was gone. That you were getting fixated on noises in the house. He said you'd stop taking your sleep supplements correctly." I gripped the phone. "I told you all that before 10 this morning." Yes, Mason knew. Maybe not about Erin, but he knew I had been watching him. I had begun preparing my family. Mom, police found a woman behind my bedroom wall. Silence. "What?" "A woman. Hannah. She has been missing for over 2 years." "That doesn't make any sense." The words cut. I understood why she said them. I still hated hearing them. "Mason has taken care of you for years," Mom said carefully. "Are you sure you understand what happened?" I almost dropped the phone. "Are you asking whether I misunderstood a woman being removed from a locked room?" "I'm asking you to calm down." My eyes filled. "Mom, she knew my name." No answer. "She knew Mason." Silence. "She knew about the tea." My mother stopped breathing. Then quietly, "Where are you?" That afternoon, Brooke texted, "Mom says you're saying some crazy stuff. Please call me before you do anything that ruins your marriage." I stared at the message for a long time, then called her. "What did Mason tell you?" "Hannah, what did he tell you?" "That you haven't been yourself." "Did he tell you police found Erin Cole alive?" Silence. "What?" "She was inside my house." Brooke did not speak. "Behind the wardrobe." Oh my God. She knew Mason. Another silence. Then Brooke whispered, "Are you safe?" That helped. Not enough, but it helped. The next morning, Erin asked to see me. She was sitting upright in her hospital bed when I arrived. I brought several drinks and several foods because I could not stand the thought of choosing for her. She noticed. A tiny smile appeared. "Couldn't decide." "I figured you should." She chose blueberry muffin and apple juice. "Choice is nice," she said. I sat. For a while we did not speak. Then Erin asked, "When did you meet Mason?" 5 years ago. Fundraiser. I looked at her. "Yes. He already knew who you were." My stomach tightened. "How?" Erin looked down at her muffin. "I worked in payroll at his company," she began slowly. Not like someone delivering a perfect explanation. More like someone pulling broken pieces out of a box. Mason had asked her to fix small discrepancies, then unusual reimbursements, vendor credits, payments that did not make sense. Eventually, Erin realized money was being redirected. She confronted him. He remained calm. That was the detail she remembered most. He never yelled, she said. He smiled. A few weeks later, he invited her to meet him somewhere private because he claimed he had paperwork proving she had misunderstood. She disappeared that day. For months, Mason held her elsewhere. Then, after Grandma June's estate was settled, and I took possession of the farmhouse, he moved Erin into the hidden room. Drugged. Unconscious. She woke behind my bedroom wall. Why here, I asked. I don't know everything. I appreciated that answer. For once, nobody was telling me they understood Mason better than I did. Erin continued. I needed me to keep doing some account work for his company, at first. And later, she looked at me. Your accounts. My stomach twisted. Not huge transfers. That was the frightening part. Small ones. Fake repairs. Duplicate payments. Charges for equipment. Money that could disappear because I was running a busy family business and trusted my husband to help with household expenses. He complained about the garden center, Erin said. What did he say? That people treated him like he worked for you. I stared. Mason had joked about that. Dozens of times. I suddenly heard the jokes differently. Erin looked uncomfortable. He called it your little flower shop. My jaw tightened. I used to say that when he was annoyed. He said you didn't understand what money was worth. That sentence hit hard because Mason had said almost exactly that to me after I refused to sell part of our land to a developer. Sometimes I forget you've never had to understand what money is worth. I had told him he sounded like a jerk. He had laughed and kissed me. I had forgotten the argument by dinner. Erin continued. I hated that customers called it the Brooks place. I looked away. I kept saying people thought he married into someone else's life. I felt something settle inside me. Not a full answer, but a shape. What else did you hear? Erin hesitated. Then, he called your mother a lot. I turned back. From that room. Yes. About what? You. What did he say? That you weren't sleeping. My throat tightened. That you forgot things. I said nothing. That you were emotional. My eyes filled. That he didn't want your family embarrassing you by asking questions. I looked down at my hands. Erin whispered. I practice sometimes. What? Before calling. I stared at her. She looked frightened even remembering it. He would sit there and say things out loud. What things? She swallowed. I don't want Hannah to feel embarrassed. My stomach dropped. Please don't tell her I called. I closed my eyes. I'm only worried because I love her. A tear rolled down my face. Those were Mason's sentences. His exact rhythm. Erin did not interpret it for me. She did not need to. I understood. He had been rehearsing concern. Not only for my mother. For everyone. My sister. His mother. Maybe friends. Maybe employees. He had been becoming the narrator of my instability. Did he talk about Christmas? I asked. Erin's eyes shifted. Yes. How? He said after Christmas Eve nobody would think it was weird if you were asleep all day. My body went cold. What else? I don't know. Erin, I really don't. She looked frustrated with herself. He talked about your family going home late. He said your mom would assume you were exhausted. I stared through the window. Christmas Eve had always been loud. Mom's baked ziti, Brooke ruining dessert, lottery tickets, old movies, Mason pouring everyone wine, Mason cleaning up afterward, Mason making me tea. For the first time I could see how easily everyone might leave. How easily he could say, Hannah's exhausted, let her sleep. And my family, already trained to think I was struggling, might smile sympathetically and drive away. I asked Erin, why didn't you make noise? Her face changed. I did. My chest tightened. At first, she stared at the window. The first week after he moved me there, I screamed. I could barely breathe. He turned the television up. I remembered nights Mason suddenly wanted movies in bed. I told you the pipes were making noise. I covered my mouth. He showed me pictures of you asleep. Erin's voice became very quiet. He said if I made you curious, he'd make sure you never woke up. Tears filled my eyes. So I stopped. You stayed quiet because of me. I stayed quiet because I believed him. That is not your fault. She looked at me. You were a stranger. I shook my head. I was 8 feet away. You were still a stranger. Then why care? Erin stared down at the blanket. After a long silence, she whispered, I could hear you laugh. That broke me. She rubbed her thumb against the edge of the muffin wrapper. You sounded happy. I cried. And I kept thinking, if I made noise, maybe he'd destroy both of us. I reached toward her, then stopped. Erin noticed. She held out her hand. I took it. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Two women, same man, two different prisons. He controlled Aaron with fear. He controlled me with trust. I had underestimated both of us. Mason came home Friday. Police strongly advised me not to be alone with him. I agreed. There were people nearby. I also knew that if I vanished from the house, Mason would know immediately that something had happened. At 6:18 p.m., his truck pulled into the driveway. He came through the mudroom door carrying his suitcase. Same jacket, same wedding ring, same face I had loved. Hey! I looked up from the stove. Hey! He kissed my cheek. My entire body registered danger. I smiled. Good trip. Fine. I glanced toward the staircase. Only once. Painter finish. Mostly. Dean always finds something to complain about. Mason laughed. He gets paid by the complaint. I stirred tomato soup. My hands stayed steady. Dinner was grilled cheese because I could not pretend to be normal while cooking anything more complicated. Mason talked about Indianapolis, a broken forklift, a manager quitting, a customer crashing a cart into patio furniture. I laughed twice. Then he asked, "Talk to Brooke this week." I looked at him. No, his eyes rested on me. Your mom. Briefly. Another pause. I knew. Maybe not how much. But he knew something. After dinner, he reached for the kettle. I'll make my own tea. He stopped. What? I forced a laugh. I'm 32, Mason. You always let me make it. Maybe I'm growing. He smiled. Not with his eyes. Apparently. I poured hot water. He watched. You forgot the magnesium. My pulse jumped. Right. I opened the cabinet, pretended to add powder, drank enough for him to see, then took the mug upstairs. I poured the rest down the bathroom sink. I climbed into bed. Mason joined me later. I pretended to sleep. An hour passed. Then he moved. Wardrobe. Beep. Door. And disappeared. This time Aaron was gone. The room had been searched. Some equipment removed. Some left. I lay in darkness wondering what my husband's face looked like when he realized the woman he had controlled for more than 2 years was no longer there. 20 minutes later, he returned. He sat beside me. His fingers touched my wrist, then my cheek. Hannah. I did not move. He leaned close enough that I felt his breath. Then he whispered, "Good girl." My stomach turned. He climbed into bed. I remained still until sunrise. The following morning, Mom called before 8. Mason called me. Of course he did. What did he say? He wants us over tomorrow for lunch. Used. Brooke, Linda. His mother. Why? Mom hesitated. Hannah, say it. He thinks the family needs to talk about you. I laughed once. No humor. He's getting ahead of me. What do you mean? He wants everyone sitting at my table hearing his version first. Mom went quiet. Then, what do you want me to do? That question mattered. For the first time in weeks, someone was asking me instead of discussing me. Come, Hannah, I don't think. Bring Brooke. What are you planning? Nothing. That was partly true. I want him to talk. Sunday lunch had been family tradition long before Mason. Grandma June started it. After she died, we did it less often. But Mason loved those lunches. He carved meat, refilled glasses, loaded the dishwasher before dessert. My mother used to say he was the reason our family still sat together. That was why he chose Sunday. Family meant credibility. Family meant safety. Family meant everyone already knew their roles. I planned to be the worried husband. I was supposed to be the unstable wife. Sunday arrived cold and bright. Mom came first. She hugged me too long. Mason noticed. Everything okay? Fine. Mom was a terrible liar. Brooke arrived with red eyes. She avoided Mason. He noticed that too. His mother Linda arrived carrying pumpkin bread. Sweetheart, she said when she saw me, you look exhausted. I nearly laughed. Of course Mason had spoken to her. We sat. For 15 minutes, everybody performed normal life. Chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, Christmas inventory, grocery prices, Brooke's apartment, Mason's Indianapolis trip. Then he put down his fork. There's something I think we need to talk about. The room changed. He looked at me with practiced sadness. Hannah's been having a hard time. I stared at him. Nobody spoke. I didn't want to embarrass her. My skin went cold. Aaron's voice echoed in my head. He practiced. Please don't tell her I called. I don't want Hannah embarrassed. Mason continued. But ignoring this isn't helping. I folded my hands. What exactly are we ignoring? He sighed. No, explain. His expression remained patient. You haven't been sleeping. I sleep every night. You know what I mean? No. I glanced around the table. You've been forgetting conversations. Which ones? Hannah. One example. This isn't a courtroom. One example. His jaw tightened. Last month you forgot telling me you were worried Brooke resented the inheritance. Brooke's head snapped toward him. I looked at her. Did I ever tell you that? No. Mason interrupted. This is exactly what I mean. I turned back. What? I'll become defensive whenever anyone expresses concern. Mom's eyes moved between us. I asked, did you tell Mom I'm drinking wine with sleep supplements? Mason's expression changed slightly. I told her I was worried. Did you tell Brooke I'm forgetting conversations? I told her. Yes or no? Linda spoke. Hannah, he's trying to help. I looked at her. Then he should have no problem answering. Mason leaned back. You hired a contractor to tear apart our bedroom while I was out of town. I hired a painter. You moved something I specifically asked you not to touch. There. Anger. Small. Real. Mom noticed. So this is about the wardrobe, I asked. This is about your behavior. What behavior? Suspicion. Of what? You tell me. I almost smiled. He still wanted me to say it first. I did not. Instead, Mom. When Mason called you worried about my memory, did you ask me whether I was forgetting things? She looked down. No. Brooke. No. Linda. She hesitated. No. I nodded. You all talked about me. Nobody answered. But nobody talked to me. Mason sighed dramatically. This is exactly the paranoia I've been telling them about. Mom flinched. Something shifted. I looked at her. Then Brooke. Then back at Mason. You told Mom I was confused. I said you were overwhelmed. You told Brooke I thought she resented me. I said you were carrying guilt. You told Linda I was still unstable after Grandma died. I never used that word. You just built the sentence around it. Mason laughed quietly. Listen to yourself. I stayed calm. That bothered him. I needed emotion, something he could point at. I gave him none. You spent months teaching everyone in this family not to trust my voice. His smile disappeared. I'm only worried because I love you. There it was. Exact words. I looked at my mother. She looked sick. Brooke's eyes filled. Mason noticed. What? Nobody answered. I looked at him. No Mason. My voice remained quiet. For the first time in 2 years, I am thinking clearly. His face hardened. I continued. You told everyone I was forgetting things. He opened his mouth. You told them I was drinking too much. Hannah, you told them I was unstable. I never. You told my mother not to ask me questions because you didn't want to embarrass me. Mason became still. I watched him realize Aaron had talked. He recovered quickly. I don't know what you think you heard. I heard it from the woman behind our bedroom wall. Silence. Linda's fork hit her plate. Mason did not move. Brooke covered her mouth. Mom began crying. Mason's face emptied. I continued. Dean moved the wardrobe. His eyes locked onto mine. There was a steel door. Linda whispered. Mason. I ignored her. Behind that door was Aaron Cole. Mason stood so fast his chair scraped backward. Everyone needs to leave. I remained seated. No, Hannah. His voice no longer sounded concerned. It sounded like him. Maybe for the first time. Sit down. His eyes widened. Brooke looked at me. Mom looked at me. Mason did not sit. What exactly do you think you're doing? Letting my family hear me without you translating. Brooke whispered. Mason, was she really there? He turned toward her. She is not what Hannah thinks. Mom stared. What does that mean? She was involved in theft. I said, so you chained her inside our house. I didn't say that. She had a chain around her ankle. Linda started crying. Mason? He snapped. Mom, stay out of it. Linda physically recoiled. That was the moment his mask cracked in front of his own mother. I saw it happen. Mason looked around the table. This was usually his room, his audience. I understood family gatherings better than anyone, but the rules had changed. Brooke asked. Why did she know Hannah? Mason did not answer. Why did she know about the tea? His face tightened. Mom looked at him. What tea? I stared at my husband. The tea he made me every night. Mom's face went white. Mason said, you have no idea what you're talking about. I replied. Then explain why I stopped drinking it and suddenly stopped sleeping through you opening the hidden door every night. Silence. Mason stared at me. For the first time, genuine surprise appeared. You were awake. I said nothing. He realized the mistake. Too late. Brooke whispered. Oh my God. Mason turned toward her. This is complicated. No, I said, it isn't. I looked at me. You drugged me. His jaw tightened. You don't know that. You kept Erin behind our bedroom. You don't understand what she did. You told everyone I was losing my mind. Because you were falling apart. My mother stood. No. Mason looked at her. She wiped her tears. You told me she was falling apart. She was. Mom shook her head. You told me not to ask. I was protecting her. You were protecting yourself. Mason's face hardened. Carol, you don't know what you're talking about. My mother flinched at his tone. Then something in her changed. You called me from that room, didn't you? Silence, Erin had told us. Mom finally understood. Mason looked away. Brooke stood too. You told me Hannah didn't want me around. My head turned toward her. Mason stared. Brooke's voice shook. Last spring. I looked at her. What? She was crying now. I called twice. My chest hurt. Mason said you were exhausted and didn't want company. I turned to him. He remained silent. Brooke continued. Then he told Hannah I was busy, didn't he? I answered without looking away from Mason. Yes. That was one of the cruelest discoveries. There had been Sundays I thought my sister was drifting away. Days I felt hurt when she did not visit. Brooke thought I did not want her. Mason had separated us with nothing more than polite messages. My mother reached into her purse. She put several printed screenshots on the table. Messages from Mason. Hannah had a rough night. Please don't mention I called. She gets defensive when people worry. I think she drank again. She forgot that Brooke called. I'm keeping an eye on her. Linda stared at the pages. Her face changed as she read. Brooke placed her phone beside them. More messages. Different wording. Same story. I looked at Mason. You weren't insulting me. He said nothing. You were erasing me politely. His eyes turned cold. Then he laughed. Actually laughed. This is unbelievable. I stayed seated. You're right. He pointed at me. You think because you inherited a flower shop and a farmhouse, you understand how the world works. My mother whispered. Mason. I ignored her. You have never built anything. I looked at him. No, you were handed everything. Maybe. You walk into that store and people smile because your grandmother's name is still on the sign. Our name. Exactly. There it was. The resentment. Years of it. You know what it's like being introduced as Hannah Brooks's husband for 5 years. I said nothing. To work twice as hard and have people ask whether I'm helping at your store. Brooke stared at him. Mason's voice rose. Your house, your business, your grandmother, your land. I watched the last pieces of the man I thought I married fall away. Everything is always yours, Hannah. I answered quietly. I liked our life. He laughed bitterly. That was the problem. The room went completely still. That sentence told me everything. I had never wanted our life. He wanted what our life could become once he controlled it. I asked, was that why you kept pushing me to sell the back acreage? You should have sold. Grandpa planted those trees. They are trees. They mattered to me. Everything matters to you when it gives you an excuse not to move forward. And you thought getting rid of me was moving forward. Linda made a small sound. Mason saw what he had done. I immediately stepped backward into his old voice. Hannah, you're upset. I almost smiled. Even now. Back to the script. You need to calm down. Brooke stepped beside me. She sounds calm. Mom stood on my other side. So do I. Mason looked at the three of us. This was the one thing he had not planned for. Conversation. I had survived because we spoke to him separately. Mom got one version. Brooke another. Linda another. Me another. The moment we sat together and compared his stories, his entire structure collapsed. Mason turned towards the staircase. I'm done with this. Where are you going? To get my things. I moved. I said. The police already took most of what was inside. He stopped. His back went rigid. Then he turned. For several seconds, nobody spoke. What exactly did they take? I said nothing. What did Erin give them? Still nothing. His face darkened. You have no idea what you've done. No, I stood. But I know what you did. He stepped toward me. Brooke moved closer. Mason pointed upstairs. That room had nothing to do with you until you started digging. I stared at him. Nothing to do with me. You weren't supposed to touch that wardrobe. My pulse jumped. Why? He realized where I was taking him. He stopped. I stepped closer. Why Mason? No answer. Why wasn't I supposed to move it? He clenched his jaw. Because you don't listen. Why? You always have to. Why? I exploded. Because you weren't supposed to find her. Silence. Complete. Instant. Mason froze. Brooke's hand flew to her mouth. My mother stared at him. Linda sat down as if her legs had stopped working. Mason's face changed. I knew. He had finally said the one sentence he could never take back. I looked at him. Softly. There you are. The doorbell rang. No one moved. Mason looked toward the front hall. Then at me. I did not smile. This was not victory. There was too much damage for victory. Detective Tessa Grant entered with 2 officers. Mason stared at me. You called them. Tessa answered before I could. We were already nearby. That bothered him. I could see it. Something had happened outside his control. Something he did not know. Tessa stepped toward him. Mason looked at me one last time. His expression contained no love. Maybe it never had. Only rage that I had become unpredictable. I said, You think you won. I shook my head. No, you do. No, Mason. I looked around the table. My mother is crying. Your mother can barely look at you. My sister spent months thinking I didn't want her. Aaron lost more than 2 years. My throat tightened. There is nothing to win. Tessa took another step. I held Mason's gaze. You just don't get to own the ending. Then they took him away. I will not turn the next several months into a courtroom story. There were interviews, investigators, financial questions, medical tests, police reports. There were enough records inside the hidden room to prove Mason had been taking money from me in small amounts over time. There were enough sedatives hidden in our house to make his Christmas plan frighteningly clear. On an old device, investigators found drafts of messages written as though they were from me. I'm exhausted, turning my phone off for a day. Don't worry if I don't answer. Mason says I need to rest. Those messages frightened me more than complicated bank records ever could. He had been practicing my disappearance in my own voice. But the money was never what hurt most. Money can be counted. What Mason stole from my family was harder to measure. Trust. Directness. The habit of asking each other questions. My mother came to see me 2 weeks later. I had moved into the downstairs guest room because I could not sleep upstairs. She stood in the doorway while I packed clothes. I failed you. Mom, no. She shook her head. Please don't make me feel better. So I didn't. She sat on the bed. I believed him because he sounded calm. I folded a sweater. He always sounded calm. I thought respecting your privacy meant not asking questions. I stopped. I needed you to ask. She began crying. I know. You didn't need to fix anything. I know. You didn't even need to automatically believe me. My own voice shook. You just needed to let me speak for myself. Mom nodded. I know. Forgiveness did not happen that day. It happened slowly, through changed behavior. Mom stopped asking other people how I was doing. She asked me, directly, sometimes too directly, Hannah, are you actually okay or giving me the polite answer? At first it annoyed me. Then I realized annoyance was healthier than silence. Brooke and I had a harder conversation. Mason had used something real between us. Grandma had left me the farmhouse and a larger share of Brooke's garden and home. Brooke never hated me for it, but she admitted it had hurt sometimes. I wondered why Grandma trusted you more. She didn't. She gave you the house because I worked there. I know. She paid part of your college tuition. I know. She wasn't keeping score. Brooke cried. I know that now. That conversation hurt. But honest pain felt different from manipulation. Honest pain did not require anyone to disappear. Erin's recovery was slow. There was no magical ending where she walked outside and suddenly became fine. She hated locked doors, small rooms, keys jingling behind her. She slept with lights on. She struggled when people stood too close. But she kept choosing. That mattered. Months later, she rented an apartment near her aunt. The first night there, she texted me a photograph. Bare room, mattress, 2 boxes, 1 plant, and 4 enormous windows. Her message said, Look, 4 windows. I replied, Show off. She sent a laughing emoji. I sold the farmhouse 6 months later. People were surprised. I wasn't. The house had belonged to Grandma, then to me. But after everything, every nighttime sound made me listen for breathing behind walls. Keeping it would not have honored her. It would have trapped me inside what happened there. I kept Brooke's garden and home. That mattered more. One snowy morning before we opened, I stood inside the greenhouse watching employees tie Christmas wreaths. Brooke was arguing about ribbon colors. Ruth was complaining on the phone to a supplier. Someone had burned coffee. The old Brooke sign still leaned slightly left outside. For the first time in months, I felt Grandma June there. Not as property, as memory, as habit, as the way people treated one another. That was when I understood Mason's biggest mistake. I thought inheritance meant ownership. Grandma dies. The house becomes Hannah's. Hannah dies. The house becomes Mason's. Simple. But that had never been what Grandma meant by legacy. Legacy was teaching me how to save seedlings from a late frost, showing Brooke how to make pie crust, giving Ruth a key and never asking for it back, remembering which employee's child was starting college, making coffee before sunrise during spring planting season. Legacy was what people carried forward, not what someone else managed to take after you were gone. A year after Dean moved that wardrobe, I bought a small 2-bedroom bungalow 15 minutes from the garden center. No gate, no acres, no giant bedroom, no hidden spaces. The kitchen cabinets were ugly. The porch steps needed repair. I loved it. The first night I could not sleep. Around midnight I got out of bed. Nobody had made me tea. Nobody had told me I looked tired. Nobody had asked whether I had taken anything. I walked into the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, and made grilled cheese at midnight. For absolutely no reason. I ate it standing at the counter. That tiny moment felt bigger than moving houses. Choice had become sacred. I chose when I slept, what I ate, who entered my home, which phone calls I answered, when I wanted company, when I wanted silence. Months later, Erin visited Brooke's garden and home. Ruth spotted her across the greenhouse. Both women stopped. Ruth walked toward her. "I'm sorry." Erin shook her head. "You found me. I should have found you sooner. You found me." Ruth started crying. Erin hugged her. I walked outside. Some moments belong to the people inside them. For a long time, I thought the lesson of everything that happened was simple. Question strange medication. Notice missing food. Do not ignore locked doors. Trust your instincts. Those things matter. But they are not the deepest lesson. Mason's real power came from speaking for everyone else. He told Mom how I felt. I told Brooke what I thought. He told Linda what our marriage was like. He told me what strange noises meant. He told Erin what would happen if she resisted. He almost became the narrator of my entire life. And nobody noticed because his voice was calm. That is what I understand now. Cruelty does not always shout. Control does not always slam doors. Sometimes it makes tea. Sometimes it washes the dishes. Sometimes it remembers your mother's birthday. Sometimes it calls your sister and says, "Please don't tell Hannah I'm worried." And sometimes the person trying hardest to sound reasonable is the person most afraid you will finally speak for yourself. My family is not perfect now. Mom still worries too much. Brooke and I still argue. Ruth still criticizes how much money I spend on seasonal displays. But when we disagree with each other, not through someone else. That difference means everything. Mason thought my grandmother left me a house. I was wrong. She left me roots. And roots are much harder to steal. So tell me this, if your own family believed someone else's version of you without ever asking for yours, could you forgive them? Or would that betrayal change the family forever?